Shadowfax the Grey, Lord of all horses. Imagine if your regular horse decided to hit the gym for about 1,000 years, learned to run faster than most cars, and developed the personality of a noble aristocrat who's slightly annoyed that everyone else is so slow. That's Shadowfax for you. This magnificent stallion doesn't just gallop, he practically teleports across Middle-earth while making every other horse look like they're stuck in traffic. He's so fast that he can outrun the Nazgûl's fell beasts, which is basically like outrunning a squadron of flying nightmares while they're having a bad day. Gandalf doesn't even need a saddle because apparently when you're the Lord of Horses, you provide your own first-class seating. Shadowfax is so legendary that other horses probably have posters of him in their stables. The best part? He chose Gandalf as his rider, which means this horse has better judgment than most politicians. If horses had LinkedIn, Shadowfax's profile would just say too elite for your comprehension, and somehow that would be accurate. The great eagles of Middle-earth are basically what happens when you take regular eagles and give them the attitude of airline pilots who actually care about their passengers. Led by Gwaihir the Windlord, these massive birds are the Middle-earth equivalent of premium air transport, except they don't charge you extra for luggage and they won't make you take off your shoes. Gwaihir has this habit of showing up at exactly the right moment to save people from certain death, which makes him either incredibly well-timed or just really good at dramatic entrances. He's rescued Gandalf more times than a helicopter in an action movie, and unlike modern aircraft, he doesn't require fuel, maintenance, or dealing with airport security. The eagles are so majestic that they make flying look effortless while carrying full-grown wizards across mountain ranges. They're also probably the only creatures in Middle-earth who can look down on everyone else, both literally and figuratively. If you ever need a ride from these guys, just make sure you're fighting the forces of evil, because apparently they have very strict passenger requirements. The Mumakil were Middle-earth's most fearsome instruments of absolute chaos, enormous mobile battle elephants capable of trampling entire armies with a single charge. The largest measured up to 100 feet in length, which is basically we're all gonna die size. A big part of their internal rage was dedicated to crushing everything in the massive hatred reactor that powered their desire to step on hobbits. The Mumakil were divided into a front end that will murder you and a back end that will also murder you. This housed the main tusks, legs the size of tree trunks, and war howdahs where Southron archers were having the time of their lives shooting down at tiny people. Each beast was managed by millions of years of evolution, specifically designed to make Rohirrim horses question their life choices. To move, they relied on 4 legs that converted grass and hatred into unstoppable momentum. The war towers included elevated platforms where Southron soldiers could talk about their latest day of, holy crap, we're riding a literal mountain over field rations. The tusks were powered directly by I am large and you are not energy. When charging at full power, they could destroy a cavalry charge in seconds. Their power could be adjusted to only destroy your will to live, as seen at Pelennor Fields when they showed up and everyone collectively went, oh no. The concept originated with Mother Nature's What If Elephants But Bigger and Angrier experiment. The Southrons saw potential in large animal military advantage and spent thousands of years making them more terrifying through selective breeding. Southrons recruiters refined the concept of mobile siege engines that eat grass. A main issue was teaching them not to step on their own soldiers. Feeding them was among the greatest challenges. Each beast required exact nutritional calibration or risk having your secret weapon die of hunger before battle. The logistics demanded complete military redesign around how do we transport creatures the size of buildings. The Mumakil were said to be unstoppable due to their enormous size. However, Legolas built in a critical design flaw where shooting them with enough arrows in exactly the right spots could bring them down, which was overlooked by the surely nothing can kill a creature this large philosophy. This weakness was used at Pelennor Fields to neutralize the beasts, though not before they caused absolute mayhem and permanent psychological trauma. Hasufel, initially Garulf's horse before becoming Aragorn's temporary ride, represents the awkward moment when you inherit someone else's horse and have to figure out if you're compatible. This chestnut stallion went from serving a Rohirrim to carrying a ranger, which is like switching from classical music to jazz and trying to keep up with the rhythm changes. Hasufel is sturdy, reliable, and probably spent his time with Aragorn wondering why this new rider keeps looking for tracks on the ground instead of just asking for directions like a normal person. He's the kind of horse who adapts to whatever situation he finds himself in, whether that's patrolling the borders of Rohan or helping track kidnapped hobbits across impossible terrain. Hasufel proves that sometimes the best relationships start with practical necessity and develop into mutual respect, even if one party prefers oats and the other prefers spending way too much time thinking about ancient bloodlines. Snowmane, King Theoden's horse, represents the bond between a ruler and his mount that goes beyond simple transportation into the realm of genuine partnership. This gray stallion carried the King of Rohan through his darkest hours and his greatest triumphs, which is like being the designated driver for someone whose job involves making speeches and occasionally charging into impossible battles. Snowmane witnessed Theoden's transformation from a king under a spell to a warrior leading his people in their finest hour. Thranduil's elk was the woodland realm's ultimate flex, this absolute unit of a deer that somehow managed to be both graceful and intimidating, which is honestly a vibe most people spend their entire lives trying to achieve. We're talking about a creature that's basically what happens when Mother Nature decides regular deer need a serious glow-up and about 500% more royal energy. This thing was massive, like inappropriately large for something that should theoretically eat leaves and mind its own business. But no, this elk said, I'm going to be the size of a small building and also more elegant than a ballet dancer. And honestly, respect. The antlers alone could probably house a family of hobbits, but instead they chose violence, the elegant kind. Now, you might be wondering, why does the Elven King of the Woodland Realm, a literal immortal being with magic powers and perfect hair, need a giant deer? Valid question. The answer is because walking is for peasants, obviously. When you're Thranduil and your entire personality is dramatically staring into the distance while being inexplicably attractive, you need transportation that matches your energy. The elk wasn't just big, it was smart big. This creature had the battlefield awareness of a military strategist, and the grace of someone who's never had an awkward moment in their life. During combat, while everyone else's horses were having existential crises about being near giant spiders, this elk was out here treating Mirkwood like its personal dance floor. But here's the thing that really gets me. The elk was basically Thranduil's therapy animal. You know how some people have emotional support dogs? Thranduil had an emotional support battle stag. Feeling sad about the decline of the Eldar, hop on the elk. Need to intimidate some dwarves? Elk time. Want to make a dramatic entrance that will haunt people's dreams? The elk has entered the chat. The breeding program for these things must have been wild. Like, somewhere in Mirkwood there were elves whose entire job was make deer bigger and more intimidating, and they were probably having the time of their lives. Should we stop at horse-sized? Absolutely not. Bigger, more antlers. I want visiting diplomats to question reality. And the maintenance. You think regular horses are high maintenance? Try explaining to your stable hands that the King's Ride eats exclusively organic forest vegetation, blessed by moonlight or whatever. The logistics alone probably kept half the woodland realm employed. The elk basically disappeared from history after the Third Age, which is honestly a tragedy. Imagine if these things were still around during modern times. Traffic jams would be solved overnight because nobody's blocking the lane when there's a building-sized deer approaching in their rearview mirror. Tolkien really said, what if deer, but make it intimidating, and created something that haunts the dreams of every fantasy mount that came after. The fell beasts of the Nazgul are what happens when you take the concept of a flying mount and run it through a nightmare filter operated by someone with serious anger management issues. These aren't dragons, they're something worse. Flying creatures that look like they were designed by a committee of horror movie directors who are trying to out-disturb each other. They're massive, terrifying, and have the kind of presence that makes everyone in a 5-mile radius suddenly remember urgent business somewhere else. The fell beasts serve the Nazgul with the kind of loyalty that comes from either genuine devotion or absolute terror, and honestly, it's probably better not to ask which one. They fly with the grace of creatures who know they're the most frightening things in the sky and aren't particularly concerned about anyone's opinion on the matter. If these beasts had a Yelp review, it would just be screaming sounds and 1-star ratings from everyone who survived the encounter. Brego, Aragorn's horse, has the distinction of being chosen by someone who spent most of his life walking everywhere and suddenly needed to look kingly on horseback. This brown stallion basically had to teach a ranger how to be royal, which is like being a driving instructor for someone who just found out they're supposed to be a race car driver. Brego is patient, loyal, and probably spent a lot of time wondering why his new rider keeps looking dramatically into the distance instead of paying attention to where they're going. He's the kind of horse who understands that sometimes being a king means making tough decisions, and sometimes it means looking majestic while your crown is slightly crooked. Brego helped Aragorn transition from guy who hangs out in the woods to King of Gondor, which is basically the ultimate glow-up assistance. If horses gave career counseling, Brego would specialize in helping people discover their hidden potential while also providing reliable transportation.